Hi, everyone, and welcome to the spring edition of Better Together. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Angelique Colvin, and I am the community coordinator here at Oslo Science Park. Today, I am joined by Daniel from GRIN, and what they aim to do is to increase the rate of unused medicines and medical devices while also helping manufacturers and producers transition from linear to more circular processes. Just some quick tips and notes. If you're following directly on Crowdcast, there is an Ask a Question button at the bottom, so you can just place all your questions over there. And there is a comment section on the right side. So if you have any comments or something that you want to say, you can just pop it in there, and I'll be checking in on the questions and asking Daniel. So please feel free to ask questions at any time. So thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
You're welcome.
Yeah, if we could just start by getting a little bit of an introduction to you and GRIN, essentially.
Yeah, my name is Daniel, and I'm currently the CTO in GRIN. I'm also a co-founder. And GRIN was, I think a few weeks ago, we turned 3 years old. So 3 years ago, our founder, Lars Martin, he had an idea about circularity, and he had a sort of this problem with all the single-use plastic bags that we use in retail today. And he thought that, okay, there must be an alternative that is more sustainable and more circular. So he came up with this idea of a reusable shopping bag, and sort of designed a bag with an RFID tag in it, and designed a return box, and created this system for money deposit. So essentially, a customer could buy this bag and use it for as long as they want, and they could return it in one of our boxes. We would register that it had been returned, and then we would pay out the deposit digitally straight into the bank account. So that was the start, and then we've sort of grown from there and sort of transitioned more towards building this sort of technical platform that enables this circular system, sort of to be able to facilitate sort of the return of any type of product, basically. And now, yeah, a lot of medical devices and medicines is our sort of focus area.
Yeah, and kind of at what stage did you choose to change perspective from having this basically the ability to pant plastic bags to medical devices?
It was in the beginning of last year, just before the pandemic hit. We were invited to join Novo Nordisk in Denmark, the big diabetes company, sort of one of the biggest companies in Scandinavia. They have every year or every other year, they have something called Innovation Challenge, the Novo Nordisk Innovation Challenge. And we were one among 5 startups globally that were invited last year. And our challenge to solve with them was to sort of use the system we had tested and piloted for the reusable bag, to see if we could apply it to some of their products. So we ended up working with them for 6 months and developed a prototype for a sort of return of pre-filled diabetes pens. And that kind of sort of opened our eyes for this entire new industry that really none of us had any experience from before. And we see that, okay, this is an industry that for natural reasons, they have a lot of products that are single use. Because when you work with health and everything, you have this kind of risk of infection and contaminations and so forth. So almost everything is single use. And we think that, and these companies as well realize now that, okay, there has to be smarter solutions to these products.
Nice. And if I could just kind of backtrack a little bit, could you, for those who may not know, and that is also me included, what does it mean to go from linear to circular, essentially?
It means that I mean, the way I don't have the exact numbers now. There are some reports out there, the circular gap report. Anyone can Google if you want the latest numbers, but a very little percentage of all the products that we manufacture today are linear. That means you take resources, natural resources from somewhere. You take those resources, you use them to manufacture something. You make a product, you distribute that product, you sell it to a customer, and the customer use the product. And after use, most products they have an end of life. It can be a single-use product that you take away a coffee mug, you use it once and then you throw it away. It can be a car as well. It lasts a little longer, but eventually it will be sort of be disposed of. And how traditionally, I mean, a lot of these products, they just end up in landfills globally. They are incinerated. And so that's sort of a linear system. You don't really use the materials again. So circularity means that yes, we do in Scandinavia with the bottles and cans, that you take a product and you sort of use it. Then you, instead of throwing it away, you return the sort of material in the product. You put it back into the loop. So instead of the manufacturer using raw material, natural resources, they can source their material from existing products instead. And I mean, it's not black and white. A lot of products are sort of somewhere in between. And I mean, but a full circular product, that everything we use gets recycled and turned into other products. Or ideally, things get reused, and you don't even have to recycle them. You have a product that after use, you can return it and someone can just reuse it.
Yeah. And could you just talk us a little bit through what you guys are offering in the Medivore?
Yeah, so the Medivore is this new product that we are currently developing in collaboration with a sort of global consortium that is led by Janssen, the pharmaceutical arm of Johnson & Johnson. Most people probably more familiar with that name. But I think Janssen are, most people probably heard of them today because they just, I think, had their vaccine, their corona vaccine approved. So we're working with them to develop what we call the Medivore, and it's basically a smart sort of collection platform. It's a physical hardware, call it return machine, where we aim to develop these sensors that can identify different types of products that are returned. And when we have identified a product that has been returned, we can sort them easily, and we can also enable these kind of incentive schemes and sort of nudging techniques to sort of to affect or sort of motivate people's behavior, so change their behavior, make people return products. I think that's one of the key challenges when you want to establish a new circular system, because there is a lot of technology out there today, and some of the challenges is, you know, how do we implement this? How do we get people to actually use the products, and instead of throwing them away as they've done for their entire lives, they return them in these machines. And so we have this kind of digital surface and this digital interface that is sort of integrated with the machine, that can sort of communicate with sort of end users and patients, and just integrate with different incentive schemes, if it's money or gamification, or it's could be connecting it to a pharmacist's bonus point scheme, for example.
And speaking of kind of changing people's behaviors, do you guys have somebody in-house, or are you working with somebody externally that is perhaps helping with the psychological part of how you can, encourage more people to change their behaviors and to essentially keep on recycling or the materials?
Yeah. Well, I think what we do is based on from this that we started with 3 years ago, sort of how do we get people to buy this reusable shopping bag and to return it. I think that gave us a lot of experience and insights into the psyche of people, and sort of gave us a lot of kind of pointers. Okay, this is important, this works, this doesn't work. But there are some examples out there. I mean, for example, the system we have in Scandinavia or in Norway with bottles and cans that are recycled, I think they have a return rate of over 95%. So, and they've developed that over 30 years. So we know that, for example, financial incentives works very well. But in terms of how do we work with it, I mean, I'm an engineer. I'm a civil engineer from Sweden, from Chalmers in Gothenburg. So I have more of a technical background. And but the founder, Lars Martin Berglund, he has his academic background is in behavioral science. So I think from the get-go we have this mix of sort of psychology and technology in GRIN, and that is, I think, critical when you sort of want to develop these types of solutions. But we're also cooperating with a lot of people. We're still a very small company, so we are sort of depending on collaboration with different people, and now recently not only in Norway but also globally.
Yeah, and I know that you guys also had a podcast, and you just mentioned this a little bit. What were some of the insights or learnings that you took from basically the first part that you experimented with the plastic bags? What have you learned from that?
I think that well, one sort of funny thing is that we learned is if you want to design a reusable product and you want it to be reused and people to return it, it can't look too good. If you design a product that looks too good, then people will just keep it. And you also have to find, if you have a financial scheme such as pant on bottles and cans, for example, and as we had on the bag, it's critical that you find the right level of sort of the financial incentive. I mean, it can't be too high, but then people won't buy it. But it can't be too low either, especially in a country like Norway, when if you a krona here or there might not matter that much to people. So finding that right balance is important. But also, I think what we learned is that yes, GRIN as a company, I think it's difficult to develop a technology, a platform for sort of a circular return platform at the same time as we develop and sort of design and sell reusable products. So I think that we realized, okay, that is a little bit too much for us. We'd rather focus on the technology and help other people, other startups that, for example, that develops and designs different reusable products, which is sort of happening now all over the world.
Nice. And what does it take to be able to basically return or increase the return of these products? I mean, I imagine that it must be quite difficult considering composition of materials and some of the stuff that is produced. Could you just talk us a little bit through that?
Some of the challenges, yeah, I mean, for sort of where we are now, working with medical devices and unused medicines, and how do you collect this? I think that is one of the challenges, and that we are sort of our sort of primary challenge as a company, not to develop technology that solves some of these issues. But you have different different pharmaceuticals that can have various effects, and they need to be separated from other. Can't be mixed, you can't mix different products easily, but I think technology is moving quite fast, and you have these. We don't ourselves in GRIN, we don't recycle the products. We just collect them, and then someone further downstream, they take the products. Either if it's a manufacturer itself that takes the products back and put them straight back into their own factories or manufacturing facilities and plants, or you have a sort of a recycler. In Norway, for example, it could be Norsk Gjenvinning or other companies, and they of course every year they advance their sort of technical solutions and their capabilities and how they can handle and recycle and refurbish different devices. So our challenge is more, again, towards the sort of behavior. How do you get how do we make it as hassle-free as possible to return their products and sort of not make it, and we all know it's a busy Monday to Friday work week, and adding these different, that's essentially what you do. You add like different tasks in people's lives. So try to make those as sort of seamless as possible, make that experience as seamless as possible. That's sort of at the core of what we in GRIN do.
And If I could just ask, what have been also the challenges in essentially developing the hardware part of this?
It is still a challenge. We're sort of just recently hired 2 new people, sort of 2 talented hardware firmware engineers, and they're just sort of getting started now. So the consortium I mentioned before that was led by Johnson, it's basically the aim is to develop over a couple of years, do a lot of research and technology development, and sort of how do we, and the sort of main challenge I think is how do you identify medical devices that are returned. So for example, when you return an aluminum can in a grocery store in one of the return machines, then the machine recognizes that it's an aluminum can, so you get 1 krona for it. And if it's the wrong can, if you bought it abroad, most people probably experience that, and it's not accepted, then it sort of spits it out again. So that's a similar challenge that we are trying to solve now. So previously we used RFID technology. We tag products with RFID tags and had RFID sensors. But for medical devices, it's quite a process to change the design of a medical device, put RFID tags on it, even change the packaging. It's a sort of, it takes several years to have approval and to sort of change that product for a pharmaceutical company. So we now have this project where we're going to look at sort of optical sensors, cameras, and image recognition, sort of use machine learning to learn the machine to identify different products using cameras. So that's I'd say that's the main challenge that we're going to work with in the coming year.
Yeah. And are you say at the moment you are kind of focusing on pharmaceutical companies and products. Are you ever kind of going to expand after that, or is this basically an area that you want to remain focused on?
Well, due to our sort of limited size and resources, it's we're going to stay focused on it. We are focused on it for now, but I mean the technology we develop, and I mean as we started, we didn't do that. So we have this kind of broad, the whole circularity. It's something that's going to hit every sector and every producer, every manufacturer, and every retailer will have to become more circular in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's a huge transition, and I think the technology we develop, it's if we can solve the sort of challenges for medical devices, then I think those are sort of some of the toughest devices to make circular. So if you can make those circular, then I think we can help make any product circular with our technology. So yeah, the sky is the limit eventually.
Yeah, I think when we were talking earlier, you had something that I thought was very interesting in a way about just how much waste is actually being produced by pharmaceutical companies. I think you were talking about the EpiPen. I would like for you to just share that because I thought it was quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's numbers we got from them when we were working with Novo last year. But one of their main product is an EpiPen, and I think they produce around 500 million pens each year, and around 80% of those end up in landfills, and the rest 20% ends up in incinerators in countries where we have sort of good infrastructure and good waste management. But sometimes you say, oh, they end up incinerators, we use the heat and so forth, but you wouldn't call it still. That's not a circular system. It's okay. It's better than ending up in a sort of landfill somewhere, but still. So that's and I mean each pen is around 70 grams of plastics or thereabouts, and that's just one product from one manufacturer. I mean there's a whole there's a range of devices out there. I mean, you have asthma inhalers that people use every day all over the world, and I think what's going to happen in the coming years is you have this development where you have more and more complex medical devices as science advances, but you also have the fact that more and more people get sort of lifted out of poverty. So in 10 years or 20 years, I mean, there are billions of more people that will have access to sort of modern, advanced healthcare. And so the number of devices and complex medical devices that people use will only grow in the future. And you also have this trend of treating people more and more outside of hospitals, getting sort of home treatment. And that also requires that the development of more complex medical devices, essentially.
I think that's quite fascinating that you should mention that, because I think in a way that is something that perhaps is overlooked, and or it's in the back of people's heads in terms of development and how far and how fast development is going, that it is only going to add to it, and therefore as the years go by, the problem essentially only gets bigger.
Yeah, but it's the same in all sort of sectors. I mean, if you look at the rise of the mobile phone and the smartphone, and you have all these accessories with it now, wearables, AirPods, and I mean, how many? I probably have 6 or 7 different headphones at home, and sort of earplugs that I use, and they stop working. And sort of, I mean, billions of people have several of these just lying at home, these digital devices. So it is a big environmental problem, and it's obviously not sustainable, regardless of what type of device it is.
Yeah, that's very, very true. It's something, of course, for me personally, something that is very interesting, of course, with what you're doing as well, is to essentially the sorting part of it, and how it's going to be introduced to people who haven't done this before, or it, as you said, it becomes a little bit more of a new task that you're adding to people's lives. And do people really have the time for that is a really big question. I think it's very interesting that you should present that also as a problem. I'm just gonna have a look and see if we have any questions. It doesn't seem like we have any questions. And if we could just hop on to just the last thing, if there is anything that people within the Oslo Science Park's community, if they could help you with anything, what would it be? Or
I think that we're right now in a kind of we're entering into kind of a quite intense technology development phase, and but not only technology, but just the system. How do you design these systems? So I mean, anyone who has valuable input, and I know there's companies here at Forskningsparken, for example, a lot of companies, a lot of people with a background in the pharma industry, particularly. So it's just to reach out to us, and we'll take it from there. And I mean, every knowledge and experience we can get is valuable.
Lovely, super. Well, thank you so much. Oh, question. Sorry. All right. Sorry, we have one question here, and it's from Sindra, and he's asking, "At what arenas will you meet your customers / end users?"
Right now, we are we've been focusing on existing sort of stakeholders in the sort of pharmaceutical industry. So we've been sort of base case now is to work with pharmacists, for example. Sort of see that, okay, in the same way that the grocery stores has become sort of the collection points of bottles and cans. I mean, can pharmacists sort of become more than just distributor of medicines? And they do today collect. They're sort of mandated to collect unused medicines and different products. But for example, our platform could be used by pharmacists or at pharmacists. I mean, hospitals is another sort of natural place. But I think some of the work packages that we're going to go forward with in our research and development is sort of to assess this, which are the ideal collection points. I mean, it could be a mall, it could be a grocery stores as well, that that you deploy these collection systems in grocery stores and gas stations, maybe. Yeah.
Super. And all right, doesn't seem like there are any more questions. So thank you so much for your time. And if any of you out there are a little bit more curious about GRIN and what they're doing, you could just reach out to Daniel. I've also dropped their website down below, so you can just click on that, have a read, and hopefully get in touch. If you find any way you can help, then as he said, he'll be very keen to hear from you.
Yep.
Yes, and that's it for us. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks.